Additional amendments to the counteroffer. Senator Crapo.
Mr. Chairman, my amendment would be in reference to what I believe is item number 32 in the Senate response, which was to reject the House position on the exemption of small businesses from the Sarbanes-Oxley Section 404 requirements. And I would seek to, I don't know what the proper amendment is, to either substitute the House amendment language back in or to change our...
I think it would just be probably to strike the language from our counteroffer.
Yeah, then that would be my amendment, to strike the language from our counteroffer and accept the House position. The reason for this is that I believe that for a long time now we in this country have recognized that what are called non-accelerated filers, that's small businesses with a market capitalization of $75 million or less, are unduly burdened by the Sarbanes-Oxley Section 404B requirements. And in response to that, the SEC for several years now has exempted them itself from compliance with Section 404, but that exemption is due to expire. And my understanding is that when the House debated this, it was a broadly bipartisan vote supported by the White House as well, to just make it statutory and clear that Sarbanes-Oxley should not apply to those non-accelerated filers. And we all have received recently a letter from companies and associations representing nearly every sector of the U.S. economy indicating that this provision, if it's allowed to go into effect, will impose a disproportionately negative cost burden on smaller public companies and will also have a detrimental impact on initial public offerings. And so I simply would make the motion that we change our rejection to an acceptance in the Senate counteroffer to the House.
Well, let me just say on this, and again, I made the case when I made the thing, not that graphs mean a lot, but this graph here indicates that 53% of smaller businesses would be exempt from this, 47 would comply, and as you point out, there has been an effort. Back in 2003, after the, in fact, I think in this very room, was the conference between Paul Sarbanes and Mike Oxley on the adoption of the Sarbanes-Oxley legislation. In 2003, we all heard from the smaller public companies about the problems of compliance with the audit requirements. Since that time, I'm led to believe, based on inquiries we've made, that a lot of those concerns have been alleviated, but nonetheless, I realize there's still some worried about the cost of all of this. I pointed out earlier some of the problems exist in smaller companies, and where investors are investing in smaller companies, there's no less risk of losing their investments. So I still think there's a value of it. I appreciate what went on in the House and the White House's support of the House provisions, and as well as the concerns being expressed by the small business community. So I would still urge us to stick with the House Senate position, but anyone else want to be heard on this?
Well, Mr. Chairman, could I just briefly respond?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I would like to have a roll call vote on this, but I believe that clearly, since we have not been requiring the compliance of these companies by SEC rule for several years, and it's very clear that there has not been a negative impact from that. I realize that some who want to keep the provision in place and have it go into effect are arguing that it's been streamlined and we don't need to worry about it. Well, that's not what the companies who are contacting us are indicating, and that's not what the broad array of folks representing small business interests across the country are saying. And like I say, because we have the White House support for this, it's broadly a bipartisan supported vote in the House, and I believe is bipartisanly supported in the Senate as well. I'd like to see us remove that objection from the Senate response.
All right. You've asked for a roll call vote. Any further debate? Clerk will call the roll.
Chairman Dodd?
No.
Chairman Dodd votes no. Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson votes aye. You both should talk. Mr. Reed?
No.
Mr. Reed votes no. Mr. Schumer?
Schumer would vote no by proxy.
Senator Schumer votes no by proxy. Ms. Lincoln?
Ms. Lincoln, proxy wants to vote aye in favor of the Crapo amendment.
Ms. Lincoln votes aye by proxy. Mr. Leahy?
No by proxy.
Mr. Leahy votes no by proxy. Mr. Harkin?
No by proxy.
Mr. Harkin votes no by proxy. Mr. Shelby?
Aye.
Mr. Shelby votes aye. Mr. Crapo?
Aye.
Mr. Crapo votes aye. Mr. Corker? Mr. Corker votes aye. Mr. Gregg? Mr. Gregg votes aye. Mr. Chambliss?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Chambliss votes aye by proxy.
Clerk will report.
The votes are 7 yes, 5 no. The measure is passed.
Amendment is agreed to.
President.